All right, welcome to Tuesday, 7th grade. Our agenda for today is we are going to preview the week. We'll go over Friday and Monday, and today's topic is food chains, or our food chains, I should say. So this week, friends, our topics look like this. Today, or yesterday, was energy flow. Today are food chains. Tomorrow, you're going to take a little quiz on what we've been talking about so far about ecology. Thursday, we will regroup on Zoom and learn more about food webs. And then Friday is a little practice with food webs. So that is where we are going. So on Friday of last week, you had a little assignment to complete. It was assignment number 39, practicing identification of producers and consumers. I did set a little reminder, if you've forgotten to complete assignment number 39, please make sure you do so prior to the quiz tomorrow. Yesterday, there was a little video here for you to watch about energy and ecosystems. I think it was about 5 minutes long or so, and then there were some definitions to record right from the video. So I'm going to skip over that. The definitions were: solar energy is radiant energy from the sun. Solar refers to the sun, and it's important in our discussion of ecology because it's used in photosynthesis. Chemical energy is the energy that's stored in those bonds of molecules, and living things get their energy from food. ATP is a specific energy molecule that's used by cells. Thermal refers to heat energy, and an important question: the sun is the original source of energy that powers the entire ecosystem. That sounds like a test or a quiz question. What is the original source of energy that powers ecosystems? And again, that's the sun. Also worth noting up here at the top that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It's just being transferred from one form to another. If you did not complete all of these definitions, again, these are found in the video from yesterday. Today, we're looking at food chains. Our learning target is to describe the relationships that can exist in a food chain. We can have different lengths of chains. We see this one has 3, this one has 4, and this one has even 5. So sit back and relax. I think the food chain video is about 3 minutes long. Oops, push the right button.
Dear Tim and Moby, are plants always at the bottom of the food chain? From Dwog. In any given ecosystem, all living things are linked together by what they eat. Organisms depend on each other for nourishment to survive, and this joins them together in something called a food chain. In this one lake, there are many different food chains at work. Plant plankton are eaten by small animals, say shrimp. Shrimp are eaten by fish, which are eaten by even bigger fish until the bears that hang around the lake decide to go fishing. What would happen if we caught every last shrimp in the lake and had a big barbecue? Well, the fish that depend on the shrimp for food would go hungry, and the population would dwindle. And if there weren't any fish, then the bears would go hungry too. Disruptions in the food chain can work the other way too. If all the bears ran off to join the circus, the population of large fish that the bears normally eat would grow out of control. They'd get themselves into trouble by quickly eating all their food. Food chains aren't the whole story. They often combine to form complex food webs containing many interconnected and overlapping chains. A food web has 3 major elements: producers, consumers, and decomposers. Plants make up the bulk of the world's producers. They are able to make their own food using photosynthesis, a process that harnesses the energy of the sun. Producers are the largest part of any food web, and you can find them at the bottom of all food chains. Organisms that eat other living organisms are called consumers. They can't make their own nourishment from sunlight, so they get it by eating the producers. Humans are consumers, as well as birds and cows and millions of other species. Primary consumers eat the producers. Animals that eat plants are examples of primary consumers, and they're also called herbivores. Secondary consumers are the organisms that eat the primary consumers. These are carnivores, or meat eaters. Some animals, like humans, are called omnivores because they eat both meat and plants. There are other kinds of consumers too. Parasites are small organisms that live on the bodies of other organisms, using up the victim's energy. Scavengers eat the carcasses of other dead animals. Decomposers are mostly bacteria and fungi. Decomposers cause the mold that grows on your bread, but they also do all sorts of good stuff like breaking down dead animals and plants into reusable elements and recycling nutrients back into the food web. Humans have to be more careful to protect every species in the world. Just about every species on the planet, no matter how insignificant it seems, is vital to the food web. If even the smallest plant or animal becomes extinct, the consequences will ripple throughout the food web, causing environmental chaos for every species concerned, including us. It's hard to predict exactly what will happen, but one thing's for sure. I don't want to be around if that bear doesn't get his dinner.
All right, so next, friends, oops, we don't want to watch that again. We are going to take some notes, please, in our digital notebooks. So make sure you have those open to the correct page. I believe it's page number 17 that looks like this. So please, again, locate this page in your digital notebook. We'll start at the top, defining what a food chain is. And I said a food chain shows how organisms are linked together in an ecosystem by what they eat. And then the arrows that are drawn represent the transfer of energy. So again, a food chain shows how organisms are linked together in an ecosystem by what they eat. And the arrows show transfer of energy. We've already talked about producers, so let's jump down to what is a primary consumer. What is a primary consumer? And that's going to be an organism that eats producers. Remember, producers, we can call these primary consumers herbivores. Again, we're taking notes. I believe it's page 17. I like to list examples. So in this darker green area, I've listed some examples of primary consumers. Examples include things like caterpillars, grasshoppers, and hummingbirds. Next up, we have secondary consumers. Secondary consumers are organisms that eat primary consumers. If they're eating another animal, they would be carnivores. Examples of secondary consumers are things like spiders, snakes, and seals. Next up is tertiary consumer. A tertiary consumer is an organism that eats primary consumers and secondary consumers. They are carnivores because they're eating animals. They're usually predators. They're going to sit towards the end of the food chain. Tertiary consumers. All right, next up, oh, we've got some examples of tertiary consumers, things like tuna, shark, and eagles. Next up, we have decomposers. Decomposers are organisms that break down dead and decaying matter. Break down dead and decaying matter. Examples of decomposers are things like beetles, earthworms, and mushrooms. When you're finished jotting down these notes, if you want to raise your hand so I know you're up for the group activity. Again, if you could please raise your hand when you're finished so now I know you're ready to move on. We'll wait one more minute. All right, so what we're going to do, people, is we're going to go into breakout rooms for 7 minutes. You're going to work on classifying these things over here as either a producer, a consumer, or a decomposer. You can simply write a P, a C, or a D. Then you've got some food chains over here, and you're going to try to identify the missing organism. So circle the missing organism. For that. I'm going to welcome back, everybody. I will share my screen here again. So you were working in your breakout rooms, looking at these scenarios and deciding if something was a producer, a consumer, or a decomposer. So we'll see how your answers compare to mine. So I said an apple tree was a producer, a hop was a consumer, a mushroom, a decomposer, a carrot, a producer, a dragonfly, a consumer, bamboo, producer, cougar, consumer. Bacteria could be all of them, but I kind of put decomposer in bold because it's probably most commonly associated with that. Daffodil, producer. Pigeon, consumer. Snake, consumer. Catfish, consumer. Any questions on the ones that I have listed there? All right, I'm not hearing anything. And then the fun part was looking at the food chains. I liked the side of the page in your notebook. Sun's energy is used by grass. The grass is consumed by the zebra. The zebra is consumed by the lion. Then for the next one, I said sun is used by algae. Algae is consumed by the snail. Not sure why it was listed twice. The snail is consumed by the fish, which is consumed by the raccoon. Sun used through photosynthesis to make food for plants. The plants were eaten by the javelina, and the javelina was eaten by the jaguar. Sun used by the grass. The grass was eaten by the weasel. The weasel was eaten by the snake, which was in turn eaten by the owl. The final one was pretty challenging. We have sun being used by phytoplankton. They have chlorophyll, so they're able to perform photosynthesis. The phytoplankton was consumed by the zooplankton, which is more animal-like. The zooplankton was consumed by the krill, and the krill is eaten by the humpback whale. Again, I'll pause there for a second to see if there were any that you had questions about. Yes.
What's a javelina?
I think it looked like a little pig. So let's maybe Google a javelina. I thought it looked kind of pig-like, if I remember. Javelina. It looks like this, medium-sized.
They're peccaries.
What?
They're peccaries, which is
Yeah.
a small pig.
Yep, small little pig.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Kind of cute, aren't they? Kind of cute little guys. All right, so those were our answers there. Now we're going to watch one more brain pop before we wrap up our lesson today. And this one is on energy pyramid. So it's kind of a nice bridge between what we're talking about today and what we'll look at on Thursday. So let's look at energy pyramids. Just need about 7 more minutes of your time today.
It's that time of year again, the time when fear leaves the ocean and heads into your living room. Nature's deadliest killing machines, as you've never seen them before. It's Shark Month, and this time, it's personal.
I don't think you have anything to worry about. Some of that footage seems a little fake. Dear Tim and Moby, what is an energy pyramid? Your friend, Nicole. I don't think she means that pyramid. The energy pyramid is a model for how energy spreads through an ecosystem. You remember food chains, right? Why are you being so literal today? Okay, the food chain describes how organisms in an ecosystem are linked together by what they eat. At the bottom are producers. On land, that includes plants from moss and grass to shrubs and trees. The producers are eaten by primary consumers. These are herbivores, or plant eaters. In turn, the primary consumers are eaten by secondary consumers. These are carnivores, or meat eaters. This continues until you reach the animals at the top of the food chain, which have no natural enemies. Sharks are at the top of the marine food chain. Bears might be a better example here. Meanwhile, decomposers, like bacteria and fungi, break down dead animal and plant matter. This recycles nutrients back into the ecosystem. Food chains usually combine to form food webs made of many interconnected and overlapping chains. But let's back up for a sec and ask why animals eat in the first place. Well, yes, leaves, grasshoppers, and snakes are delicious in certain cultures, I guess. But that's not it. Animals eat to gain energy. It all starts with producers. They create all of the usable energy in an ecosystem, and that's why they're called producers. Through the process of photosynthesis, they convert the sun's light energy into chemical energy, specifically a simple sugar called glucose. Glucose is the fuel that drives all living organisms. Plants use up most of the glucose they make to grow and reproduce, but they store a little bit of it in their bodies. So when a rabbit eats a plant, he's only getting a small fraction of the energy the plant got from the sun. The rabbit, in turn, uses up most of that energy to do things like breathe, keep warm, move around, and make baby rabbits. So if a fox comes along and eats that rabbit, he's only getting a teeny tiny fraction of the energy that was first absorbed by the plants. Get it? Right. All of the energy in an ecosystem ultimately comes from the sun. And since the amount of energy decreases as it travels up the food chain, it can be represented as a pyramid. In general, each level of the pyramid gets 10 times less energy than the level below it. So, let's say you've got a square meter of forest. Every year, the plants growing in that little patch produce 10,000 calories. That's a unit of energy. Now, let's say herbivores consume those 10,000 calories. They burn 9,000 calories and store 1,000 in their bodies. So, for their predators, that square meter of forest produces only 1,000 calories of energy per year. That means there are going to be way fewer snakes and raccoons than rabbits and grasshoppers. See where this is going? Right, if the carnivores eat all of the primary consumers, they'll gain 1,000 calories of energy. They'll use up 900 calories and store 100 in their bodies. So, for the top predators, that square meter of forest only yields 100 calories per year. Oh, come on, sharks aren't part of the equation here. That's better. Anyway, since the bears and hawks have a fairly limited number of calories to live on, the ecosystem just can't support that many of them. So, in most cases, as energy decreases up the food chain, so does biomass, the combined mass of all the organisms. A small meadow might support 10,000 grasshoppers, 100 snakes, and only 1 or 2 hawks. Great, now let's get back to Shark Month. I think there's a special coming up about a shark who lent out money at a very high interest. Huh, who could that be? You know, there was something fishy about that guy.
Such funny humor in our brain pops. All right, so tomorrow you're taking a little quiz on ecology. Here's the good news. You can take this quiz twice. I will take the better score. So take it once, and if there are things you think you made mistakes on, go back and look at your work and then try it again. So I'll take the better of 2 scores. So our to-do list looks like this. I would look through things in your ecology digital notebook. I would make sure assignment 39 is complete, and then you can take the quiz on Canvas. We're going to stop